People today, they could spend half their lives over 50. That's a lot of living. So it helps to have a wise friend and fierce defender in your corner. A friend like AARP. So your health lives longer.
This is just slow-mo karate?
Just slow-mo karate.
Your money lives longer.
I just bought that.
I just sold that.
And your happiness lives longer. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Join today.
Welcome to AARP Illinois' virtual event. It's so wonderful to have you with us. AARP is on a mission to connect with individuals across various communities, especially those aged 50 and above. We're here to listen, understand, and address the unique needs of you and your community as we age. Our goal is to enrich your experience by expanding our local activities, providing opportunities for you to discover and engage with all that life has to offer right here in your own community and virtually. As we journey through today's event, we invite you to consider joining our dedicated team of AARP volunteers. It's a chance to make a meaningful impact and help us better serve those 50 plus across the nation. Connect with us and be a part of this vibrant movement toward positive change. Welcome. And let's make this event both fun and transformative.
Hi, and good morning, and welcome to Retirement Pitfalls, How to Dodge Common Mistakes. It will be okay. I'm Lori Hendren, Senior Associate State Director for AARP Illinois, and I'm glad you joined us today. We'll be diving into a topic of elder law and sharing practical tips to help you confidently plan for retirement while steering clear of the most common pitfalls along the way. To shed light on this important topic, as always, we have our special guest, Steve Andersson, an elder law attorney in Illinois and a contractual lobbyist for AARP Illinois. Welcome, Steve.
Good morning, Lori. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We do this every month. And I would like to remind everyone who's joining us on Facebook and YouTube viewers that please ask questions, share your comments in the social media feeds to today's guest. We will do our very best to address many of your questions and comments throughout our conversation. And I will tell you, your comments, your questions are the very best of these events as we go through a half hour, because Steve and I can be able to help facilitate, give you insights, and even share resources online that you can read and review later. So we're going to talk about a broad range of topics and can serve as a starting point for your discussions, planning, and consultation with your family and professional advisors in elder law, financial planning, and healthcare. But keep in mind that the specifics of elder law may vary by jurisdiction. So consulting with your elder law, your tax attorney, or your financial advisor is advisable for personalized guidance. So let's start this off with some opening comments from our special guest, Steve Andersson. Steve.
Sure, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here. And I appreciate that you added to the title of the talk, It's Gonna Be Okay, because that's kind of my philosophy on this. And that's not to say that there aren't serious consequences and that bad things can and do happen to people. But what I am always concerned about is that oftentimes attorneys who are marketing themselves, financial planners who are marketing themselves, will tell you the sky is falling if you don't do everything that they're telling you to do. And that's just not true. It's going to generally be okay. And what I mean by that is that the state laws in most states are generally set to kind of a default, which is mostly what you probably would want if you did nothing. So my philosophy is it's probably going to be okay, but we can do better. And that's why we're here today.
Thank you so much. And everybody, let's take a deep breath. We're going to go through financial planning, savings, legal estate considerations, Social Security benefits, a lot of our pre-planned questions. But most importantly, we want to be here for you and to answer your questions. So please put them in the chat and our producer will get to them. So let's start. All right, Steve, we're going to start. What are some of the most common financial mistakes people make in 5 years leading up to retirement?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think people in that range, I'm in that range myself. I don't know if I'll get there or not, but you wonder. But I'll give you my top 5. How about that?
Perfect.
So number one would be failing to update your financial plan and hopefully having a financial plan. The way you earned money and the way you saved money, hopefully in your 40s or 50s, it's not going to be the same. And you have to start to think about, well, what's my income going to be when I retire, if I retire or go to part-time or whatever you choose to do. So I would say number one on my hit list, if you will, is to update your financial plan or get one if you don't have one. Number two, taking on new debt. This is, sometimes it's unavoidable, medical bills or things like that. I'm not talking about that, but I'm talking about buying a bigger house, taking on credit card debt because you want to travel. Those are serious things, and when you're younger, you can kind of bail your way out of that. But as we that's not so easy to do. So I would say think carefully before you take on new debt. Number three is investing. Now I'm hoping that you have a financial plan, like I said, for number one, but investing either too aggressively or too conservatively, because you're going to be within 5 years of retirement. So in that time frame, you're going to want to start adjusting your financial investment picture accordingly. There are market funds that are actually targeted to certain dates. Like if you want to retire in 2035, there are funds that will target and adjust accordingly. You don't even have to think about it in those cases. But let's also say that you don't want to invest too conservatively and say, pretending you're retired now and you want to make sure you don't lose a dime. You still got time for the market to go up and down. So I think both can be a mistake. And so do what feels comfortable, do what feels right for you. Number four, not planning for healthcare costs. That's a big one. And some costs you can't plan for, but some you can. For example, nursing home care is really hard to plan for. And we do our very best to help people with that, but it can be difficult. You can choose to purchase long-term care insurance, for example. But if you're doing it in the last 5 years before retirement, it's probably going to be pretty expensive. So that's a choice that you have to make. But you have to bear in mind that not everything is covered, Medicare or otherwise, and even the type of Medicare plan that you choose. And last one I would say is neglecting Social Security planning. I would encourage everyone to go to the Social Security website. I bet AARP probably has a tool as well online where you put what you think are your Social Security record, and the Social Security Department actually has it, and they can tell you what you're going to earn or receive out in retirement. And so, for example, if you say, I want to retire the earliest possible point, 62, they'll show you, well, you're going to get this. If you retire at 67, the normal, now what's considered normal retirement age, it'll be this. And if you wait till 70, it'll be this. And then you can plan your income and know that this is the amount of money you can rely on coming in. So there's more, of course, but those are more common pitfalls that I think people don't attend to in that last 5 years.
Wonderful. And then our producer will put in the chat for everyone AARP's resource on Social Security, really the everything gamut you need to know, and then also an individual link just on that Social Security calculator. Thank you. I think something we need to talk about is when your loved one has to go into a nursing home, they talk about a 5-year look back. What is that about?
Okay, so what we're talking about is if you're looking to receive Medicaid benefits for nursing home care. Medicare, which most of us or all of us will be entitled to eventually, it does not cover much as far as long-term care is concerned. They cover rehabilitation time in a nursing home, but not really otherwise. So we're talking about Medicaid, which is a needs-based system. So the question, Lori, that you're asking about is, if you have too many assets to qualify for Medicaid, because Medicaid is for low income, low asset folks, can you just transfer your assets away? Well, if I need to have no assets, how about I give my assets to my kids, right? That's the idea. And the answer is no, you can't do that. And the way they stop you really from doing that is by this 5-year look back period, which means that when you apply for Medicaid, you're going to have to provide proof of all of your bank accounts, all of your assets, all of your investments, and transactions through them for the last 5 years. And if they see that in the last 5 years you transferred big amounts of money for nothing, for no compensation, then they are probably going to give you a penalty period as a result of that. So you have to be very careful. And as you might imagine, it's hard to live on for 5 years on nothing to be able to transfer that. So that's the way that the government handles that. Now, if you do have enough money to live on for 5 years and kind of spend it down over those 5 years, maybe 5 years and one day before you need it, you could make some big transfers. But again, who knows when we're going to need it? It's difficult to that.
Right. Now, is that a new law regulation from the federal government, or has that been around for a long time?
It's been around for a long time. It used to be 3 years, a long, long time ago, back when I was started practicing, in fact. But now it's pretty much 5 years everywhere.
Okay. What role does debt play in retirement readiness, and how should people handle lingering loans or credit cards before they retire?
Um, the best opportunity or the best outcome is for you to have no debt when you go into retirement. That, of course, would be wonderful, but we live in a real world where that isn't necessarily possible. What I would recommend is take a look at your debt, put it into a spreadsheet or write it on a piece of paper, and organize it by interest rate. In other words, the high interest rate ones at the top of your list, and then going down and down and down. And try to pay off the high interest ones first. There's sometimes a strategy I call the snowball strategy. I don't think I invented that. I think I took that from somebody, where if you can pay as much as you can into the highest interest rate one, when that one gets paid off, then you take the money you were paying into that one, put it into the next one. So you don't just go, oh, I'm now saving that money. Instead, you say, I'm going to keep paying as though I had 5 credit cards, but now I only have 4. Example, take what you were paying in the top one and pile it or snowball it into the next one, and then the next one and the next one, and pretty soon, hopefully, you'll be out of debt because you'll have snowballed it away.
Right. And we understand that we have medical debt, we have caregiving debt, we have the prices of everything are increasing. And so balancing it is very hard. We recognize that. That's why we're having these discussions right now. What essential legal documents should every retiree have in place to protect their assets and their wishes as they get ready to retire? I mean, is it too early to have those kind of things ready to go? Or do you wait and say, I'm going to wait till I'm 10 years to write down where my assets go?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I would encourage anybody to, at a minimum, get 2 documents. I should say this, it's 2 documents in Illinois. It could be 1 document in other states, could be 3, I don't know. But the concept is going to be the same regardless of the state you're in. And those are powers of attorney. Powers of attorney for property, in other words, your money. Property means more than just your home, it means your assets. And then power of attorney for health care, which means making decisions about your bodily self, about your future, about things like that. And these 2 documents, I think, are very important and very powerful because they name people to make these decisions for you when you can't make them anymore. And that's terribly important, that you pick someone you trust. Don't feel obligated to pick your children or pick particular children. Pick the people that you trust. Even if that's not your children, that's okay. But if it is one, but maybe not the other, pick the one you trust. That's up to you. Don't feel a familial obligation to put your affairs into the hands of someone you're not confident of. So those 2 documents are terribly important. And by the way, I have them right now. I've had them for 30 years. They're not in effect until I no longer can make decisions on my own behalf, but they're ready. So you don't have to wait to create those. You can create those right now. So those are, in my mind, the 2 most important. Then is a will. A will designate where you want your assets to go. This is in the category of it's probably going to be okay that I talked about earlier. If you don't do a will or you don't do a trust, which is the last one, either of those, it's probably going to be that if you have a fairly normal life circumstance, maybe you're married, maybe your spouse has passed away, maybe you have 2 kids, it's probably going to go exactly to those people that you might have intended. But if you've remarried, that's an entirely different story. So that's a place where you definitely want at least a will. And then the last one is the trust. A trust is a discretionary document, and that's something that I want you to talk about with a financial planner, with an elder law attorney, with any attorney that you trust that feels qualified to do that, because a will isn't for everybody. They're expensive, they're a little bit harder to manage, and they do the same things that a will does, but they do it outside of the probate process. A lot of people, I want to avoid probate, which is the court process for administering and getting your assets where you want them to go. And that will have an expense. Doesn't there's no question there will be an expense, but it's a question of balancing how much you have, how expensive that might be versus how expensive it is to create the trust. So that's why I say that is fine for some people, but probably not necessary for everybody.
So when you're married, I think as someone who is, let's say in their 70s, they're on their second marriage, but they have children from their first marriage and their second marriage. Do you appoint a healthcare power attorney, or is it is it your spouse? So, is it your spouse that automatically makes those decisions? Or if you have a healthcare power attorney, would that supersede that marriage relationship? Let's say, I decide that my best friend is going to be my healthcare power attorney. Will that trump my current spouse's decision-making authority
That's a great
for my
question.
health?
Yeah, and the answer is yes, it will once you become incapacitated, unable to make those decisions for you. Until that point, that power of attorney is not in effect, which means that if you go to the hospital, your spouse certainly has all the legal rights they have always had. It's only if you become incapacitated. Now, it's not uncommon for people to name each other as their powers of attorney, even in second marriages. That's okay, because the agent under the power of attorney, their obligation is to protect your assets for you, not for themselves. And then you can always name a successor. Let's say I name my wife, which I have, but maybe she doesn't survive me, and I never update my document,
Oh, sure.
right? So then, but I have successors, which are my children in my case, so that if I never get around to that, it still covers me.
Interesting. And so, for people that are listening to us today, I recognize the hardships of the economy right now. Is this something that individuals have to go pay and work with an elder law attorney to do a POA or healthcare power attorney? Or is this something that they can go to an elder law website, download, and what do they just print it? And let's say they have it and they just keep it on their person. I just think of one, how are they able to do it without another financial burden as you look to plan? And then the next question is, how does this become knowledgeable and part of the conversation when that crisis occurs and you're in the hospital, you're on a ventilator? How are people to know? Is it on your medical record? Do you keep it on your chain, or does the person automatically know?
Boy, that is an excellent question.
It's
Actually,
a big
both
one.
that is a big one and an important one. Can I answer that one first, and then I'll talk
Sure.
about the how you
Yeah.
did? So that one is terribly critical because many people have powers of attorney and they go unhonored. They don't get honored because nobody knows they exist. They're sitting at home or they're in a safe, that you have the combination to, but nobody else knows. Those aren't going to be honored. You have to communicate with the people who are your agents. You have to communicate with your family members so everyone knows who your agent is, even if it's one of them, or more importantly, if it isn't one of them. You have to let them know so that they know where the document is, and also can get it in that emergency circumstance and be able to tell the doctors and nurses, yes, my father does have a power of attorney. We'll get it. It's this person. They'll honor it to begin with. Not fully, but they'll
Mhm.
begin with until you can get it there. And by the way, that the thing about the safe, don't put your powers of attorney in the safe. Put
Mm.
safe location, but an accessible location. That can be a particular desk drawer in your home that you keep important papers, and tell people where it is. Don't put it in a safe because, again, you can put your will there, you can put your trust there. Don't put the documents you might need in an emergency in there. Some people, I'm going to tell you this because I think it's fun but true. Some people will put them in the freezer. And the reason
Oh,
they put them in the freezer is if you have a fire in your home, one of the last things to burn is your freezer. And so
hmm,
the freezer, it's kind of an old fashioned idea.
yeah,
True. If you choose to do that, put it in a plastic bag that doesn't
yeah. Freezable.
wet. If you fire, which I hope you don't. So that was the second question. The first question about how do you get this drafted? My best recommendation is to use an attorney of your choosing. But you're right, Lori, that does cost money. So if you feel that you can't do that, then I would say that, well, I'll give you the example of the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois, if you go to the Department of Public Health's website, they have the forms and you can print them. And you'll be able to download them. And as long as you follow the instructions for how to properly execute with witnesses, it will be valid. It may not be complete, may not be as good as it can be, but it will cover a lot. So if you don't want to see an attorney, you can't see an attorney, that's at least a good beginning. And I bet other states probably have something like that. If not, you can probably, boy, I can't believe I'm going to recommend this, but you can probably use Google or something like that.
Hmm.
Say, does my state have a form power of attorney? And if it leads you to a state government website, that'd probably be okay. If it leads you anywhere else, I don't trust it.
Wonderful. So what we have done is in our producer will put in there the Illinois Department of Public Health. They have forms. They have information about living wills, declaration of mental health treatment form, power of attorney, power of health care in Spanish and English. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see the links to those forms and more information and publication. We hope that will be a very helpful start for you as you work through this. But that is very interesting. And then tell me what is a POLST, Practitioner Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. What is that and how is it different?
It's similar, but it's oriented directly to the healthcare industry. And so
Hmm.
it's the same thing, the same concept of life sustaining treatment. In other words, what do I want to have happen? But it is oriented, and the hospitals and doctors have access to that information, so that if you come in maybe with no one, and you have one of these, it's a way for the doctors to be able to honor your wishes, even if no one is there, or maybe even if, like I said, the power of attorney is inaccessible for some reason. It's an opportunity to do that. People will recognize this in the term DNR, do not resuscitate, but it's much broader because the POLST
Hmm.
contemplates things that aren't just resuscitation. Remember, resuscitation, you've you've passed, and they're going to try to bring you back, which you may or may not want. That's why it's called a DNR. Post is more broad.
Okay, so this is a good question. Someone from Facebook asked, what about documents for individuals that are single?
Sure. So same rules apply. If you are single, which is not uncommon in our
Hmm.
senior, don't our spouses and whatnot don't pass at the same time, and sometimes we've never been married. That's a choice that people make. In those cases, again, the rules are the same, but I'm betting the caller or the inquirer is wondering about what I said about a will.
Mm.
Powers of attorney are exactly the same. Pick someone you trust, whether it's a relative or not. But the will, I said, if you don't put a will together, then the default will be to your spouse or your children. This person's probably wondering, well, what if I don't have those? So the answer is, if you have a will, you've got yourself covered, because now you can express exactly what you want to have happen. So that's a good idea, because you might want to give it to your nephew or nieces, or I don't know, maybe you want to give it to charity. Totally up to you. There are no wrong answers for who you want to leave your assets to. It's only wrong if it's not what you want. So a will be very effective. And in a single person situation, I would encourage that, because if you don't have one, for example, again, in Illinois, could be different in other places. If you have no will, you have no heirs at all. So I'm saying no children, no spouse. Then it's going to go back up the family chain to your parents. Now, if your parents aren't alive, it's going to branch and go to your brothers and sisters. And depending on whether they're alive, it may go to nephews and nieces. It's also conceivable that you have none of that, that everyone has predeceased you. Then it comes to the state, ultimately, if they can't anyone. And I'm not sure most people want that. So it's a good reason and a great question. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's a really good one.
Keep them coming. Okay, so we have a next question. How can someone make sure they're not missing out on spousal or survivor benefits in regards to Social Security?
Sure. So again, this is where I'm going to encourage you to the Security website because they have calculators. So you can decide, do you want to, let's say your spouse is deceased, you've earned Social Security already, and you want to decide which is better. Should I take the spousal benefit, the survivor benefit, or should I take my own? The answer may be different depending on your circumstances. Maybe you earned way more than your spouse. Probably means the calculator will tell you to use your own, but maybe it's just the opposite. And then maybe the survivor spousal benefit would be better. So again, great tool is to go there and look at that.
Okay. So then thank you so much for the response. That was their concern. And thank you, Steve, for offering that. So we're going to also put in there the benefit calculator and all the information from the Social Security office for you. And they have a lot of resources there. So let's go. We have a little bit more time. What are some legal strategies that can help minimize taxes on retirement income or inherited assets as you plan?
Yeah, it's less of a legal strategy and more of a tax strategy because you're going to have, let's say, three buckets, if you will, of assets that are totally exempt from tax forever. Roth IRAs, for example, because you pay it before you put it into the Roth IRA. So that's one bucket. Bucket number two are tax deferred accounts, more of your traditional IRA, 401k, 427B, I think if you work for the government. These tax deferred plans where when you start to take the money out, you are going to pay tax on it. And the third are things that you've already paid the tax on, just your normal investments, your savings account, your cash liquid money. In thinking about those, the way I would recommend, and again, talk to a financial planner if you can, but generally I would recommend, I think most people would recommend, is use the ones that you've already paid the tax on and use the ones where it's tax deferred last. The reason that I say that is you've already incurred the tax, so you're not going to have any implications on those. The third bucket, or I think I called it the second bucket, I'm sorry, mixing up my buckets. The second bucket, the one that's tax deferred, as soon as you take that, that's going to add to your income tax liability for that year. And so do that one in a measured way. And you may want to choose to blend. In other words, take some of the after-tax money, some of the tax deferred, some of the never taxed money. Those are all possibilities. But I would say generally, the idea is that you want to spread that out and keep your income low so you don't pay as much tax on it.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So we are coming up to our end of our half hour. We want to thank everyone that joined us and listened to us. And we recognize this can be a very anxious and uncomfortable subject, but that's why we're happy to come here every month and have the brilliance of Steve Andersson and his reminder that it will always be okay to answer our questions and to go through some of these tough subjects with us. So Steve, do you have any closing remarks for everyone who's listening and joining us across the United States?
I do. I want to suggest to you that one thing we didn't get to that I love to talk about is how do you have these conversations with your family?
Oh,
And I just want to say just the tiniest little bit about that. Number one, have them. I know that they can be, difficult or emotional. I suggest having them at home over dinner, or maybe go to a nice restaurant with a little confidentiality where you can talk openly. But have these in a non-threatening environment so that you make sure to tell people where your assets are, what they are, and how you want them to be distributed, and where the powers of attorney are if they're in the freezer. So those
absolutely.
final recommendations for today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone who joined. We come every month. You can find our information if you go to aarp.org/Illinois. You're going to find the events, and Steve and I are on every month. And we always want to say, Steve, thank you for your time and your expertise. You're helping so many people, and we are grateful for that. Once again, thank you for joining us. We will continue to support our mission of supporting seniors, caregivers, and the entire aging community, Illinois and across the United States. We're in this together. So again, we have posted all of those sites that we've referenced here in our comments. Those will stay for you. Please take a look at those. Those are going to be resources on Social Security calendars. Illinois State has information on power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, information on AARP. Visit aarp.org. Tremendous volume of information for where you are, where you're going, or if you're a caregiver, please visit. Such a help. So again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye-bye.